Good morrow, fair ladies and gentlemen. Today I don't really have a slogan. Some people are like, hey, what? I don't have one. It's just gonna be different every time. Today we're doing a get ready with me and mythology. Whoa. Last time, if you haven't seen it, check it out. We did the kind of Greek mythology 101. I needed to take a break from Greco-Roman mythology because I was frankly getting a headache. We are doing ancient Egyptian mythology, highly requested. So we're gonna do it and we're gonna get ready. It's a Monday. I feel like a bum, but hit it, title sequence. Alright. The thing about ancient Egypt is, I'm supposed to say that, please like and subscribe. I don't know if you know, but there's this really cool feature on YouTube where if you're like, I really want to know when Tanika uploads a new video so that I can watch it because I enjoy her videos. If you subscribe and click the bell, it will like pop up as a notification on your phone, and then you'll be like, oh cool, I'm gonna watch that like on the train ride home, or like tomorrow when I'm cleaning the house or whatever. How good is that? I think it's good. Okay, so ancient Egypt, a small area geographically relative to the large area that is even just Africa, the continent itself. However, we know that in this area surrounding the banks of the River Nile and the Delta, the civilization of ancient Egypt lasted for like over 3,000 years. The written complex civilization too, that's not even predate. Like that, it's probably, people were there for way longer, probably, likely, I assume. So, fairly sure, even if you're not a history buff, you just enjoy to learn, and this is maybe like your first mythology 101 about ancient Egypt, that you would know that they did have a polytheistic deity structure. Now, in every single one of these videos, I'm going to explain what that means. Sorry to those of you who watch them all. I'm sure you don't mind. So, monotheistic is something like Christianity or Judaism, where they worship one major deity. Polytheistic means multiple deities, okay? That's all that is. So, ancient Egypt is a polytheistic mythology system. So, numerous gods and goddesses. Essentially, with the ancient Egyptian mythology system, the gods and goddesses that they did worship were said to influence various aspects of their day-to-day life. And so, from the creation of the universe to the annual flooding of the River Nile, from a person's birth to a person's death. There was a goddess who watched over women while they gave birth and over fertility. There were gods and goddesses that looked after the afterlife. There was a god of the sky, a god of Lower Egypt, a god of chaos, and then a ruling deity of Upper Egypt. So we're going to go through all of them. I know that sounds like a lot, but like when we compare it to last week, when we didn't even get through like half of the Greek gods and goddesses, it's not as many. So another key and interesting thing about ancient Egypt mythology is that a lot of the Egyptian gods and goddesses took the form of, or a partial form of, an animal. So this was to essentially, they believed that's just what the gods appeared as, but the animal forms gave the deities a very strong sense of identity, and could be differentiated very well and easily due to the way that they were represented. But the animal forms of the deities were not constant. They changed, right? So particular gods and goddesses could be portrayed as like their human form or like with their animal form, and it interchanges. Now, the other thing to note is that we're talking about like over 3,000 years of religion or mythology, a belief system that lasted over 3,000 years. So like comparatively, if you look at something as mainstream as Christianity today, and we look at the fact that it's been 2,000 years-ish since Christ, the central figure of the religion, like was around, and how much Christianity has shifted and changed and shifted and changed in just 2,000 years. Add another 1,000 years on top of that, you can imagine how much changed and shifted with pharaoh upon pharaoh upon pharaoh. There was like literally even a point in Egyptian history where the pharaoh at the time was like, nah, we're changing the whole religion. They literally changed the religion from worshipping all these gods and goddesses that had been worshipped for like thousands of years into just like worshipping another one. And then they converted back. You know what I mean? So like there was a lot that happened. The other important like preface thing, I suppose, is that the Egyptians very much put a lot of emphasis on the afterlife. It was a very big part of their ideologies, and death was extremely important. And so there was an entire ecosystem that was to take care of the entombment of the dead, and we eventually see that turn into mummification. That's why we have a lot of the amazing structures that we have still today from the ancient Egyptians, because of their belief in the afterlife. So that was a very complex part of their belief system. So let us begin. We've already begun, but in the beginning, let's talk about the creation story, because most mythologies, most religions have one, and Egyptian mythology does too. So in the beginning, there was none. Basically, we kind of have this primal chaos concept, and that's all there was to begin with. Primal chaos, and like great ocean and seas with nothing in it. So Ra, the sun god, rose out of none, the primal ocean, the chaos, right? The primal ocean of non-being. I have no words to. So Ra rises out of this primal existence of chaos. And then he sneezes, and Shu, the god of air, and oh no, he sneezed, and then Shu appears. Now the god of air. So air exists now. Then he spat out Tefnut, the goddess of moist air. So, sorry, Shu was dry air, Tefnut was moist air. Then Ra sent these two air gods, Shu and Tefnut, to go and find something, to see if there was anything in the primordial chaos kind of thing. So they leave. They go and they investigate, basically. So, I'm using Nas, by the way. So then, using his powers of creation, because again, he is their creation head figure, he speaks into existence. Keyword speak. I feel like that is in a lot of, like, in the beginning, there was the word, you know what I mean? Anyway, he speaks into existence his creations, and his creations, like, he would basically create the elements, then they would appear. That's how it was done. So he'd be like, you know, whatever. At this time, he also created Ma'at, which is the goddess of, hang on, let me get this straight. It was the goddess of universal harmony. Now, you would probably recognize her iconography. She's the goddess that has arms, but then the big wings. So yeah, she represents universal harmony, and she was created within this period. So Ra, while doing this creative work, needed some place to stand, because remember, at this point there was like just this primal chaos and primal ocean. So he made Nun, N-U-N, recede, which is like a triangular stone, right? A pyramid, if you will, which we see is very important to the Egyptians throughout their existence. Once the Ben stone had risen, he's standing on the top of it. Yeah, and like I said, he envisioned everything he was about to create, then he spoke it into existence. So, from the primal, let's get into like what he made. So from the ocean, he summoned forth plants. He then summoned forth animals. He made birds of the earth, and then he spoke their names and they appeared before him. I think I've been through that. Like, we get it, you know. Am I going to be able to read you the names in Egyptian? Absolutely not. No, I can't do that. That is above my capabilities as a hobbyist. You'll need to find a specialist in ancient Egyptian mythology for that. So this, or I don't know, come and join my Patreon. So anyway, next, this is what he does next. So he makes all the animals and plants and stuff. Then he says to his eyeball, hey, eye, and I think like the best way to explain this is that his eye, he then formed into the goddess Hathor. So the goddess Hathor is the goddess of the Nile. So she is often portrayed as a cow, sometimes as a cow, sometimes with like a cow head, sometimes with like a cow face and then like a big hat. So anyway, Hathor is created, and Ra says to her, hey, could you like go and see where the two gods of air went to, because they haven't come back to me yet. And Hathor is like, cool, no worries, I'll go do that. So she goes off and she goes to find the god and goddess of dry and moist air. Now, while she's gone, looking for Shu and Tefnut, yeah, while she's gone, Ra had like replaced his eye. Because, you know, he made him Hathor from his eye. So anyway. So he replaces his eye. Hathor finds Shu and Tefnut and then returns to Ra with them. She gets back. She sees that Ra has replaced her as his eyeball, and she's mad. She gets real mad. Actually, no, she gets sad. And so she weeps. She weeps and wept at being supplanted in this way. And the first people were born from Hathor's tears. Alright, so that's how humankind is created, is from the tears of Hathor. Because she was replaced. Poor gal. Anyway, Ra is like, don't stress. Made these humans. And returns her to his brow. But instead of being an eyeball, she takes the form of a cobra and then sits around his head as a form of a snake and helps Ra rule over the world that Ra had created. Okay, so that's the creation story. So let's move forward from here. So we have Shu and Tefnut. Remember, they're the two different air god and goddess. They get together. They have children. They have Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. It's like, it's spelt nut, but I think it's like Nut. I don't know. It might be nut. I don't know. So they have the earth and the sky. Jealous. Hang on. That's right. So the children, Geb and Nut, the earth and the sky, they become a pair. And their dad, Shu, gets jealous of this because they have laid together and had a baby, and that baby is the stars. So Shu separates them, the earth and the heavens. And forbids them from giving birth on any day of the month. But Nut won 5 extra days while gambling with another god, Thoth, which we'll cover later. So on these days, she gave birth to Osiris, Seth, Nephthys, Isis, and Isis. The 4 of the most probably important deities to the ancient Egyptians. Now, as mentioned, there's alternative creation stories, and they kind of like were, I guess, used at different points of time as the primary creation story, but the one that I told is like, from what I can find, like typically the more, I think, the more well known. I think the other one is like, yeah, it's from like Ptah. I can't really say that word in English very well, but he was like a craftsman god, and yeah, anyway, so there are other stories, so if you're like, what the hell, that might be why. And there's probably a whole bunch that I just simply haven't come across as well. Like I said, guys, 3,000 years is a long time. Lots of things can change. Okay, so let's talk about Karnak. So Karnak, man, I don't know. I'm not really sure how like to pronounce the A's and the U's in, anyway, probably should look that up. So near the River Nile stands these huge Egyptian temples, right? These were dedicated to the god Amun. Now, he was originally one of the forces of the chaos. Remember, Ra rose out of chaos. So Amun was the force that was this chaos, if that makes sense. Like the nothingness god? I don't know. And then like some portrayals, interestingly enough, actually portray him as a snake that lived in the water and was kind of like the antithesis, like the baddie, I guess. He was a snake and was like the adversity towards Ra, which is again interesting just to note, because like how interestingly that symbolism, whatever, I always. So, but as like time went on, Amun and Ra kind of became this like joint entity, and people just kind of started referring to like the primordial, I suppose, origination gods as aman-ra. So Amun and Ra were those two, like, I guess the two that were there in the existence of nothingness and then into the existence of somethingness. That is how I will end. So the other really interesting thing to note is that in the culture of the ancient Egyptians, a pharaoh was not just a secular leader. It was like the Egyptian culture, like the pharaohs, it was a religious state, if that makes sense. So when a pharaoh was a pharaoh, they weren't just like a king that could just be like overthrown and like taken out or whatever. That he was literally a god. They were seen as gods. So in a pharaoh's lifetime, he was supremely powerful. He would then go on, when he went into the afterlife, to spend eternity with the gods. Now, the pyramid tombs of the pharaohs were originally designed to actually resemble stairways. Stairway to heaven. That last part, that's not accurate. I just said that. But yeah, they were originally designed to resemble stairways. So the souls of the deceased kings could climb to join the sun god in the sky. The shape also resembled the Ben stone. Remember the stone that Ra brought up? The primal mountain on which, yeah, the sun god stood when he created the world. And also, like, at the time, the pyramids silhouetted against the sky. And that was just a permanent reminder to the people of the link between the kings and the mighty sun god. So a lot of symbolism, a lot of importance. Alright, so let's talk about some key characters, okay? Like I said before, Osiris, Set, Isis, and Horus. Yeah, they were the four, like, they were very key. Obviously, other than the ones that we've already discussed, these four were very important to the Egyptian mythology. So, let's talk about them. So, the characters in... Obviously, it's murder, isn't it? The characters in the tragic story of the murder of Osiris have a number of roles in the aspect of Egyptian mythology. Okay. So as the myth goes, the first king of Egypt was the god Osiris. Now Osiris is depicted as he has the the two things, and he goes like this, and he has a big hat on, and the beard, I think. Anyway, I think it's called a crook and a flail, that may have, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so the first king of Egypt was Osiris, okay? Like some of the rulers of Egypt after him, he took his sister Isis, who is, again, typically depicted as a female with a hat on, as his wife. And he was a good king, much liked by the people. And Isis was a popular queen, but Osiris had a wicked and violent brother, Set, who was jealous because he wanted to be the king and he wanted to be with Isis. So that's where the problem begins. To get rid of Osiris, the brother, he tricked the king into climbing into a wooden chest, which he then sealed and then threw into the river Nile. Isis finds the box, but he was dead at this point. So she retrieves the king's body, and even though it was impossible to destroy the body of a god, apparently Set did it. So Isis decided to salvage Osiris's body, and with the help of her sister Nephthys, who was the wife of Set, she gathered the fragments of Osiris's body and joined them together and bound them tightly to make the first mummy. There you go. Then, transferring herself into a bird of prey, she hovered over the body, beating her wings to infuse it with the breath of life. Osiris breathed it in long enough to impregnate Isis. Later, Osiris departed for the underworld. Isis then fled from Set, taking with her a guard of 7 scorpions. So while she was fleeing, Isis was treated inhospitably by a rich woman. And one of the scorpions bit the woman's child. So Isis took pity on the child and used her magic to cure the infant, but later, when she gave birth to her own son, Horus, he in turn was bitten by a scorpion. And Isis, who had used up all her power, could not save Horus. Fortunately, Ra saw the predicament and took pity on her and sent the moon god Thoth to cure Horus. Okay. Are we following? I don't know how much powder I put on because I was too focused on telling that story. Okay, that's enough for me. Okay, so Horus grows up. Him and Set, you know, they don't get on. They fight heaps because Horus tries to overthrow Set from the throne, because he had obviously like taken that up after he, you know, killed Osiris. So I think like at one point Set blinded Horus. Anyway, so Set was like trying to trick Horus. Horus, way smarter than that. He formed a boat out of wood and made it look like stone. So the boat race starts. Set in his stone boat isn't going anywhere, and Horus wins the race. Set gets so mad that he transforms himself into a hippopotamus and capsizes Horus's vessel. But at that point, Ra and the gods were like, okay, Set's a baddie. We get it now. We need to do something about this because Set is a baddie. So, basically, after being killed, Osiris became the ruler of the underworld. Which was a very important position, of course, because the Egyptians believed very heavily in the afterlife. Osiris was widely worshipped. Isis was a very predominant deity too. She was also extremely widely worshipped. Horus became the sky god because he's often depicted as like a falcon / human. So he ended up becoming, like the god of like a, like if you saw a falcon, that was him kind of thing. And his eyes were said to be the sun and the moon. If you've ever heard of like the eye of Horus, or the Wadjet eye, became the most popular of all Egyptian amulets. Set, on the other hand, was a sinister figure and a god of chaos in the desert. So, anyway, he didn't really get a lot from that. Okay, so there was also the ibis-headed god Thoth. He was the god of time and knowledge. He had, he had the head of an ibis. So, he was like the writing god. There was like a cult of Osiris, because he gave hope to life. Then there were the goddesses of the Nile. Now there's quite a few, so come with me here. So there was Hathor, remember? Remember Hathor? She was the our cowgirl. I didn't mean to say that. Anyway, she was associated with love and fertility. Then there was the protective goddess Taweret. I can't say it. Taweret. Anyway, she is depicted with a swollen belly and like big boobies. And she's the guardian of childbirth. So she was super important, obviously. Women wore amulets with her image as protection when they were to give birth. She was also said to stand at the gate of the underworld to help souls that were being reborn. And there was the goddess Neith. Now, Neith's emblem, she's like depicted as a woman, but she has like this shield that she wears on her head. It's kind of like, anyway, she was like a warrior goddess. So she was the huntress and the warrior, similar to Athena, you know, how we spoke about Athena in the Greek episode. Very similar, like goddess of the hunt. How interesting that it's always a female. Well, I mean, we've been through 2 mythologies, but yeah, it's like a female that's used to represent hunting, not a male. Okie dokie. So we know that the Egyptians had a very, like, death was considered as a whole new life. Very much so. So Osiris, remember him? He presided over the whole extravagant process that took place when it came to death and making the journey into the underworld, because let me tell you, it's quite the journey. Use an eyeshadow as blush. Wish me luck. Oh, not bad, not bad, not bad. Okay, so basically they journeyed through Duat, which was like a realm, like, kind of like a mid-zone, I suppose. And it was full of, it was a hard, rough journey. It's full of like horrors and perils and like monsters and stuff. It was not pretty, it was not cute. And they, no, I can't, no, let's not do that. There was like, yeah, fiery lakes, lots of snakes. They needed special spells to get through. So, hence the Book of the Dead, that's why it was necessary. They also needed assistance, which is typically why mummies were like buried with assistants, like like assisting like tokens and emblems and things like that. Now, then after if they survived that through Duat, they then got to the point where they were judged at the end. And at the end of the journey, there was something called the Hall of Two Truths. So the souls would be put through a test, and if they passed the test, the deceased would declare innocence, and then be judged by Osiris himself and 42 assessor gods. You heard that, 42. It's a big deal. Amongst these 42 judges included Ra, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Isis, Nephthys, Horus, and Hathor. Stressful. So there was 3 ways that this could go, right? The truly wicked were condemned to like a final death. No chance of passing through Duat. Ordinary souls were sent to serve Osiris eternally, and the virtuous souls were allowed to move on into a free, eternal, and happy life. So, yeah, that's honestly, that was a light version. So that is my little summarized 101 version of Egyptian mythology. I tried to do like, you know, a coal eye, not to be ironic or anything, but also, and we are talking about Egypt, so hence the eye. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being here today. If you could give the video a thumbs up, that would be amazing, and I would really appreciate it. Anyway, see you next time, guys. Bye.